You're listening to Straight from the Drafts. I'm your host Nao, social media strategist, business cheerleader and chronic oversharer. In this weekly voice note from me, you can expect actionable insights and behind the scenes stories, my best tips and all the encouragement, all with the goal of helping you plan your content with confidence so that you can turn your goals into reality with the support from your social media. So grab a drink, pop in your headphones and let's get into this week's episode. Social by Nao is 3 years old. Woo! I almost got one of those party blowers for this episode. We have some in the house. I didn't even need to go out especially, but I thought that ran the risk of deafening you if you were wearing headphones right now. So we're not doing that, but yay! How surreal. It's 3 years of the business officially. So if you are listening to this when it comes out, it was the business's birthday last Saturday on the 3rd of May. I'm actually recording this on the 2nd, but we can pretend it's our birthday. I actually celebrate the business birthday when I incorporated, so when I became a limited company, which I basically did from the beginning, but I started my Instagram account 6 months before that and actually started working with my first ever client a month before, so in the April. So it is slightly inaccurate. Fun tidbit for you there. But I love hearing stories from other business owners about their paths and where they are now. I think many of us have these like squiggly careers and unexpected journeys, so I wanted to share mine and then hopefully we can chat more. Send me a DM afterwards so that I can hear about your journey as well. I was actually talking to my sister the other day about like taking the business full time because she's really encouraging one of her friends at the moment who is super creative to try setting up a side hustle online, like on Etsy. And they said like, oh no, I could never do that full time. And she was like, well, no, maybe not right now, but maybe like one day. And I do think a lot of people have that mindset of not seeing how it's possible right now, so they just don't go after it at all. But I can honestly say that 3 years ago when I started this business, I never expected to be running it full time. I of course hoped that that would be the case eventually, but I have a mortgage, I have a partner, like I do have responsibilities. So it wasn't a jump headfirst kind of thing for me. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, getting ahead of the story, spoilers. So let's go back to the beginning. As all good stories do, let's start at the beginning. I was born in... No, I'm joking. We don't need to go back that early, but I will go back to childhood, actually, because all the best interview podcasts do that, don't they? They talk about your formative years and the impact that they had on the guest's life and their success now. And I think I've said before on this podcast already, I am a chronic oversharer, so that only feels right to do so, especially in this episode. So yes, let's start back at school, and I will tell you a bit about Baby Nao. I was always both creative and a numbers gal. There's very much two sides, like both sides of me there. But when it came to choosing my GCSEs, I went down the very much like the academic route, the route that I thought I should go down. I chose statistics over textiles and Latin instead of art, which I know kind of sounds rogue. If I'm honest, and these words are going to sound so nerdy when I say them out loud, but I really found safety in the certainty of maths because there was always a right answer. I hated my grades being subjective to like how I structured an essay or one teacher's opinion on my style of drawing. Yeah, I did enjoy that element of maths. But when I got to A levels, it literally turned into more letters than numbers. And the jump from GCSE to A levels was no joke. I always say that I peaked at GCSE. I don't think I felt like the smartest kid in the room since then. And one of my teachers, who I loved so much, she was so funny, and she always gave, I would say, like, great but potentially questionable at times, great life advice. Not questionable, just a bit rogue. When I sat in her classroom crying because I was struggling with my A-levels, not actually her subject, but the class that I had with her was literally just me, so I was safe to be my little dramatic self with her. She told me that I had clever child syndrome because I hadn't really struggled before, and now that I had this challenge, I wasn't coping, but she was essentially like, get over it. She had this great metaphor with chocolate bars, and she said that these challenges, like struggling at my A-levels, were the lion bars of life. You know, the chocolate bar that's like super chewy and it's a bit of an effort to eat. And the lion bars of life are far more satisfying than the Milky Ways. She was a little bit bonkers, but I loved her. So that just paints a bit of a picture of like 17, 18-year-old Nao. I had totally repressed my creative side and I cried a lot. I was very stressed. I was a very, very stressy 17, 18-year-old. I was not much fun. I also like waitressed at the weekends and stuff, so I didn't go out or anything. I was a bit boring. But anyway, my plan was to go into accounting. I didn't really want to study any more maths. A-levels had completely crushed my love for it, and I wanted to do something a bit more practical and jump into the world of work. So after sixth form, I started training in audit and studying my professional accounting qualifications. So it was still numbers, but in a way that felt more real. So I was a Big Four corporate girly. I had a pencil skirt, I wore a blouse, and I actually like low-key loved my 18-year-old corporate work wardrobe. It's some of the snazziest clothes I've ever... I mean, I say snazzy, like they were from New Look, but I felt very grown up. And that job was... I don't even know if I can put it into words, to be honest, which is obviously not helpful for a podcast. But I'll just paint you a bit of a picture, give you a flavour. So in my second week of work at the corporate Big Four place, I flew out to Texas with work, which was the furthest I'd ever been in my life, for 2 weeks. And then I went again for another 2 weeks a few months later. I'd previously, I think, literally like Spain was the furthest I'd ever been on family holidays. And I could feel the like high-flying career gal in me coming to life. My parents were so proud to tell everyone about my snazzy job. And honestly, I was pretty good at it as well. But something wasn't quite right. And I don't know what the turning point was. But it was quite early on. And I found myself, more often than I would like to admit, crying in the car on my way to work, on my way home from work. And what a lot of people wouldn't have seen from the outside were the 12-hour days in the office. And I skipped a lot of meals, looking back. And at best, I would be ordering food to my desk late into the evening. And I actually had permanent mascara stains on my pillowcases at home from crying into my pillow and not wanting... So like, I would just cry myself to sleep, but I wouldn't want my parents in the next room because I lived at home at that point. I wouldn't want them to hear me, or I wouldn't want to wake them up because I'd got home really late. So that's fun. And honestly, at the time, I couldn't tell you exactly what it was that I hated about working there, about that job. But obviously, I could tell you that I did not vibe. And it was only in my second year when I sat down for my year-end review and they asked me, so what do you want to get out of being here? And I deadpan replied, to get out of being here. I just wanted to get out, honestly, with my sanity intact, which, okay, super professional of me to say, but I had completely snapped by that point because, like, as I say, I know it's like cringe to admit, but I was good at my job. And honestly, despite being, you'd think I was an absolute misery ass, I did get on really well with people. So I was always being put on some of the biggest and therefore yuckiest clients for our office, which sucked. It was not fun. But I did stick it out until 4th year was done. So this was 2nd year, and I stuck out for another year or so. Because in year 4, as part of the programme that I did, I got to go to uni. So I didn't actually do uni like a normal student. Up until that point, I was working pretty much all year for the first 3 years with some exams in between. So we had a little bit of study leave, but not as much as we needed, to be honest. But yeah, then in year 4, I got to be like a quote-unquote normal student and go and live with my friends who I'd met on the course. And I'm so glad that I stuck it out so that I got to stay for that year. Because not only are those girls my best friends now, trauma bonding, but also I'm probably equally proud to say both of these things. I graduated with a 1st class honours, and I also did a ton of work on my own mindset during that year. So then with my degree under my belt, I left accounting, which I'm sure you're not shocked to hear. A lot of people told me that it was the wrong decision. I should just stick it out because I would be a qualified accountant if I'd done one more year. I'd done 12 of the 15 professional exams by this point. So it was maybe not the most logical decision on paper, but obviously for my sanity, it was 100% the correct one. And I'd spent that last year while I was at uni planning my exit. It wasn't a snap decision. And my managers at the time knew it. I wasn't being sneaky about it. Obviously, as you can tell from my previous very professional comment of, I just want to get out of here, I was quite open about how I felt about things. But yeah, as much as I hated that role, I did really like a lot of the people that I worked with. So I'm never going to burn bridges in that way. So during that year, while I was away from work in Durham, I had revisited young Nao, the creative and the numbers gal. So I literally did career quizzes and did a lot of Googling and landed on digital marketing. That felt like the key to bringing together the analytical and creative parts of my brain. Because I was so used to being so busy, I also felt like I had so much time in that year when I was my final year student. So I paid to do a diploma in digital marketing and decided that once I'd quit, I'd go into the job market simply just as a graduate like everyone else was doing. And it was really weird actually, because everyone around me were also on the program with me at the Big Four. So they were all just going back to work after graduation, and I was the only one doing applications and assessment centres, which felt like going back 3 years because that's what I'd done to get that job in the first place. But obviously it was worth it. And fun side story, one assessment centre involved doing a presentation about yourself, and I actually took 2 chocolate bars into that interview, a Lion bar and a Milky Way. And after the presentation where I'd kind of told that story, I can't remember what the context was actually of why I shared that story, but I left those chocolate bars with my interviewers, and I'm not saying that that is why I went on to get that job, but I'm not saying that. So thank you, Miss Latham, for that metaphor. And as well as actual jobs, I also applied for an unpaid internship out in Bali for a month. So after graduation, first I went to Bali. So I quit my job the day after graduation at the accounting firm, and a week later I flew to the other side of the world, causing my stepmom a great deal of stress. She looked at is it an atlas? Why can't I think of the word? She looked at the atlas so much to try and feel like she knew where I was going. And I don't really think that I allowed myself to think about it too much, because I don't remember being nervous, and I didn't need to be. I was with a bunch of other interns while I was there, And we were the best little dysfunctional family for 4 weeks. I loved it. My internship was supporting a startup founder over there with her social media and email marketing, which was really fun. And I got to put into practice what I'd learned from my diploma, have a play on Canva, all that good stuff. And it was a really, really cool trip. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. My founder was a very interesting character. I struggled with her at times, but I do think that it was a very cool opportunity, and it is quite fun to look back and be like, oh, I've done the laptop lifestyle in Bali thing. So it was an unpaid internship, and it was just 4 weeks, which meant that I did have to come home. And by that time, I'd landed the role in the digital team at a national bank in Manchester. That was the one that I'd done the chocolate bar interview for. And my role there was focused initially on web optimization and then in the analytics team. But I also sat near both the SEO and the social media teams in the office, so I really tried to soak up as much knowledge from them as I could as well. But unfortunately, there were back-to-back rounds of redundancies and restructures, and my nervous tummy was just not having fun with that. We were also in the depths of the pandemic at this point, so the role was working from home, and it wasn't super fun at that stage. So instead of waiting out another round of redundancy, I took the opportunity for a change so that me and someone else didn't have to be put against each other for the one role that was going. Yeah, I decided to look for something else, and that role was again working in web analytics. And there were parts of agency life that resembled my life back at my corporate job when I was in the accounting role. It was fast-paced, the benefits were decent, and again, I really loved the people, but it was also tough. And don't get me wrong, like, I really don't mind hard graft, but I do think that appreciating and looking after people is also really important to me. So when I was seeing a ton of ads on my Instagram about a course to learn how to become a social media manager, I paid attention. And I'd really enjoyed my internship and building the social media presence for an Etsy shop that I'd also dabbled in during the pandemic because, of course, obviously, I know I'm not alone in that. I feel like a few of us will have had that phase. And also being back in an analytics role, I felt like I'd slightly abandoned my creative side again. I did have to ask permission from work to have a side hustle, but lucky for me, my manager was really supportive of it and he was all for it. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So that's what I did. My training was complete by the November, which is when I set up my Instagram. It was in like the last week of the program that I was like, right, I need to set up my Instagram so that the coach can look through it and give me some encouragement on it. And then I procrastinated until March because I got really in my head about it. I felt like social media management was a bit like the popular clique at school and I felt really out of place. So I faffed around for a few months, not really doing anything with that Instagram that I'd set up. And then in March, I'd seen, honestly, I'll be honest, I just kept seeing a lot of angel numbers. I kept seeing like 1111 and 22 everywhere. And I know that sounds so silly, but I just decided that was a sign and I'd spent too much time and too much money to not just go for it. So I did. 1st of March, I went all in. And that's how Social By Nao was born. My first client came in the April. I dropped down to 4 days at work at my agency role in the June, I think. And then I left that agency in the December. I spent another 6 months doing a 3-day-a-week contract because I couldn't really drop down to 3 days at the agency. Not many people did part-time hours as it was, and I'd already gone down to 4, and we were understaffed, and I wasn't happy. So I was fortunate enough to get a different contract, which was 3 days a week, and that was kind of a mix of social media and community management, and also almost like a bit of PA work. But then I just really couldn't fit both in. So I had to choose, and I chose to back myself and put Social By Nao first. And that was almost 2 years ago now. Now, I did warn you that I am a chronic oversharer, and that's like 15 minutes of job history. I actually have missed a couple of bits out, so let me actually add in one more, sorry. Between my final uni exams and graduation, I also sold radios and merch at rugby and cricket grounds to earn a little bit of extra money. That wasn't like me just stood with like knockoff merch. It was an actual job that I got through an agency. So random, but yeah, it was just to earn a bit of extra money before I went off to Bali. I actually really loved that job. It's probably one of the only jobs that I've had like previous to being self-employed that I found fun. It was such a busy atmosphere, and I'm not sporty at all, but I freaking love live sporting events. So fun. I quite enjoy that I've got shifts at cricket merch stands sandwiched in between being a trainee accountant and a digital nomad in Bali on my CV. That's quite fun. Not that I've actually got a CV these days, but if I did, that would be the timeline. But yeah, I think that really is most of the jobs that I've had over the last 10 years of my life, and probably far too much detail, more than you were expecting today. So if you're nosy like me, hopefully you found that interesting. And other than a fun birthday trip down memory lane, why did I want to share all that with you? Well, first, because despite all the tears along the way, I'm actually really proud of my crazy squiggly journey. I don't regret any of it. I don't regret joining the training program to become an accountant, nor do I regret leaving it when I did. In fact, with all of my roles, to be honest, I'm proud of myself for being brave enough to walk away, even when I was told not to, or when I was worried what people might think if I left another corporate job. And I don't really believe that everything happens for a reason as such, but I do know that every role that I've had has taught me something and brought me a step closer to doing the thing that I love. So if we're looking for lessons, that's lesson one. You don't always need to have a master plan and know where you're going, and things probably won't work out how you expect them to. So just lean in and also out of what feels right at the time. Trust your gut and give yourself permission to make mistakes along the way, because they're probably not actually mistakes. The second thing, mindset. Past Nao is very much a part of who I am now, but my mindset is genuinely almost unrecognisable from back in the Big Four audit days and back when I was doing my A-levels. I'll share a bonus quote for today's episode actually, because it's one of my favourite quotes. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. For me, that was deciding that I didn't have to be a failed accounting student. I could just be a new graduate. It was knowing that my accounting background wasn't totally pointless, because not only did I meet my best friends and my husband-to-be in that role, but because it also makes my bookkeeping and finance, that side of running the business, a little bit less daunting. And it's also not getting caught up in the redundancies and choosing instead to see that as the perfect time to move jobs without feeling like I was going to be letting someone down. It's that shift of, instead of thinking, what if it all goes wrong? Thinking, what if it all works out? And having reflected on all of this, I now realise why it was that I struggled with each of those jobs in the end. And it's not because I'm work shy. It really wasn't the hours that bothered me, to be honest. It was because I wasn't aligned, not just with what I was doing, but how it was being done. Because culture and management style had and still have a huge impact on me. And one of the things that I love most about being self-employed is the ability to create my own culture and build the business's values based on my own values. And I think those things are so incredibly important. And if you haven't sat down and formalised what your business values are, then that's something that I really recommend doing. But if you don't want to go through that exercise, then at least take my final lesson as this. You're the boss. You get to set your culture. You get to decide what your business looks like and how you want to run it. So don't get caught up in the shoulds and always come back to you, whether that's the kind of clients that you want to work with, what your working hours are, where you want to work from. You get to choose. And now that I've got a freelance team helping me, that's so important to me. And I'm really, really proud of how we work together. And that brings us to today. Celebrating 3 years of Social by Nao. The business is still and always will be, I imagine, a work in progress. I'm always learning, always improving, but I do feel very excited about the future. And I'm proud of the work that I do, of my mindset, of the community that I've built around me on this journey. And also, for the avoidance of doubt, I am happy to report that no matter how many late nights that I do to make this business work, when I get into bed at night, I am no longer crying into my pillow. I really love what I do. And yeah, being a business owner isn't always easy, but backing myself and making this happen is the best thing that I ever did. My version of success might not be your version of success, but that's totally fine. You've just got to think about what it is that you want. And I hope that whatever stage of the journey you're on, whether you're thinking about starting, whether you are in the early days, or maybe you are like 5 years ahead of where I am and you're just listening to this because you're being supportive or nosy, or maybe you've got absolutely no interest in running a business at all. Whatever it is in your life that you want to do, I hope that you find the courage to back yourself as well. So, one more cheesy quote to finish off this episode in the traditional fashion. Side note, I never thought that I'd be sharing the message behind my first tattoo with the internet, but today's episode, and specifically this quote, is actually what inspired my first tattoo, so thought I might as well share that little fun fact with you. A bird sitting in a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking, because its trust is not in the branch, but in its own wings. Always believe in yourself. I love it. It's so cheesy. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great week, whatever you're up to. And I will be back next week with some more social media chat. So yeah, see you next week. Bye.